This lawyer had one job: answer a simple question in the Supreme Court. And when asked what a boy or girl is, everything fell apart. Watch this.
Meantime, staying at the Supreme Court, major arguments were heard in two cases aimed at protecting women's sports, with Justice Samuel Alito making headlines with this question.
What does it mean to be a boy or a girl or a man or a woman?
We do not have a definition for the court. What we're saying is that the way it applies in practice is to exclude birth sex males categorically from women's teams, and that there's a subset of those birth sex males where it doesn't make sense to do so according to the state's own interest.
Well, how can a court determine whether there's discrimination on the basis of sex without knowing what sex means for equal protection purposes?
Former volleyball player and sports ambassador for independent women, Peyton McNabb, joins me now. Peyton, that question by Justice Alito seemed to really be the key takeaway from yesterday's arguments. And doesn't the argument for biological males in female sports completely fall apart if you can't even define what a man is and what a woman is in the first place?
I mean, the insanity of this cannot be overstated. This sounds like some kind of made-up play, but this is real life, and that's incredibly sad that this is even having to be at the Supreme Court, the highest court in the first place. The high court can't even determine what a woman is. I mean, how insane is that? And how are you going to put a whole case based off of sex and then not even have a definition? That just shows that this is an absolute clown show. And it's sad because the women are the ones that are being punished for this.
Well, that said, it did appear that the Supreme Court seemed more inclined than not to take your position in favor of keeping biological men out of women's sports in states that enact such a law. Here's Justice Brett Kavanaugh with what I would say is a really crucial point yesterday. Listen.
Obviously, one of the great successes in America over the last 50 years has been the growth of women and girls sports. Some states in the federal government and the NCAA and the Olympic Committee think that allowing transgender women and girls to participate will undermine or reverse that amazing success.
Peyton, as someone like yourself who has been fighting tirelessly for women's sports over the course of the last couple of years, for that growth that we have seen to not stop, what was your reaction when you heard Justice Kavanaugh say that?
That was so hopeful to hear. You know, to me, this ruling should be a 9-0, no questions asked ruling, because this is supposed to be the highest court. They should always make sure that facts trump feelings. So to hear that was really nice, because you really just never know, which is the sad part about it. And he's exactly right. I mean, we've worked so hard. Women have worked so hard to even have these opportunities given to us. And the fact that we're now going backwards, we're regressing all of that hard work, it's just a slap in the face to all women in all ages.
I wouldn't anticipate a 9-0 ruling in light of one of the justices, Ketanji Brown Jackson, having a similar issue defining man, woman, when she was asked a few years ago. So we will pay attention to that. But I want to pose a hypothetical. It does appear, as I said, the court's conservative majority seems more inclined to allow states to keep biological men out of women's sports. But that's the states that enact such a law. That's the states that want to do that. What happens when there's a tournament between a team in one state and a team in another state where one of those states has such a law? One of those states, I'm looking at the blue ones, the far left ones, the Democratic ones, does not have such a law. How do you see that kind of a tournament, that kind of game between those two teams ultimately playing out?
See, that's a hard question. Of course, I'm going to take the side of the protections of women should be in place no matter what. But it's just the fact that not all 50 states are willing to stand up for their women and girls. And that's really the sad part. And it mostly is the Democratic states, which again just shows that this leadership and that administration in these states do not care about their women and girls enough to stand up for them. So I will always give credit to the 27 states that have passed some sort of legislation to protect their girls and their sports. And it should be all 50, no questions asked.
Peyton McNabb, big day yesterday. Now we await the big decision come June. A lot is going to change after.
And believe it or not, I honestly believe that many women, even in blue states, support not having men in women's sports, biological men. So basically, if you're born a boy, you're a boy, regardless if you change your sex, gender, or whatever you want to do. You're still a biological male. You have male testosterone. Even if you suppress it physically, bone density, you still have the traits of the male anatomy. So, it's like reality versus ideology. It's like legal clarity versus word games. Honestly, I believe common sense is under pressure. And we cannot sit around and we cannot be silenced about this. You don't really have this issue going on in men's sports because those same men that can't compete are finding ways to be relevant because they understand that they're physically stronger than women and they'll have an advantage. And quite honest, this should be an uproar. Why aren't more women speaking out about this? And I'm glad she is, but often you hear men defending women's sports. Often they're quiet. I'm not hearing a super majority. Like, I think if more women would speak up about this nonsense wasn't even going on. When is it that you can't define what a woman is or a man? It's almost like cult-like behavior. This does not make sense. And I said to a friend of mine, this is honestly, I do believe the United States is under attack in a sense from within the core values, the core beliefs of this country. And they're trying to break us down from the inside out. And more people got to speak up about this, especially if you have daughters or, we all do know every male or female out there came from a woman. That's a fact. So why is this such a controversial question in today's society?
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition?
Mhm.
No,
Yeah,
I can't.
you can't?
Not in
Okay.
this context.
So you
I'm not a
believe the meaning
biologist.
of the word
That is wild. This should be an outrage. And this woman is on the Supreme Court. I would think as a lawyer, all you do is you go according to the rulings, definition, like the whole legality of words, and you cannot break down, like, how can you even break down what the laws are if you cannot define? How can you protect something that you cannot define? What is it? Is it nothing? You just snap your finger? It's like we've gone down the rabbit hole. This is crazy. And this is why I say that just because someone has the same complexion as you do not mean they share the same morals and values. And we have to evolve in that sense. You cannot support someone just because that they have similar complexion. Because fundamentally, her belief system, and she and she had and she's laughing because deep down inside she knows it sounds ridiculous.
woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
Senator, in my work as a judge, what I do is I address disputes. If there's a dispute about a definition, people make arguments and I look at the
All right.
law and I decide. So I'm not.
The fact that you can't give me a straight answer about something as fundamental as what a woman is underscores the dangers of the kind of progressive education that we are hearing about.
Notice what just happened. Did y'all notice what just happened? This wasn't a trick question. This was a foundational question, and the hesitation tells you everything you need to know. Courts requires definitions. Sports relies on biological categories. If language collapse, then laws collapse. You can't run a legal system on vibes. If lawyers can't define basic terms in the Supreme Court, what chances does the rest of society have? If lawyers can't define basic terms in the Supreme Court, what chances does the rest of society has? Drop your thoughts below. Tell me what you're thinking. Like, comment. I'll see you guys next time.